much lower than this. If Natalie were smart, as soon as this segment is over, she would sell all of her Bitcoin. Because if she doesn't sell it now, she's going to sell it later at a much lower price.
All right. Well, them's what we call fighting words. And I think there's similar drivers for both. But let me introduce the two. Natalie. Natalie, meet Peter. Peter, meet Natalie. All right, Natalie, some choice words for you. What would you tell Peter?
Oh, I know, Peter. And you know what? Bitcoiners don't feel the need to constantly attack gold because we're not threatened by gold. And the reason that we have this failed fiat experiment that has impoverished our nation is because of the defects of gold. The fact that it's not easily portable, it's not easily verifiable, it doesn't offer instant final global settlement. And so you know what? Centralized authorities hijacked it, they papered over it, and we have a system of leverage and rehypothecation that hurts the working class. Bitcoin is immune to all of that. It is the savings account for billions of people that we really need and can most rely on, and it offers that final global settlement that we need. And so gold is the analog version of sound money, but Bitcoin is the digital version, and that's why it's going to be the faster horse in this race.
Peter?
There's nothing sound about Bitcoin. It's losing the race right now. Take a look at your screen. Gold is up $25, $26, and Bitcoin is getting clobbered. You know, there is no flaw in gold. Gold worked great for 5,000 years. The problem is the flaw is with governments. The flaw is with human beings, not with gold. But Bitcoin is really flawed because it doesn't have any actual value. Gold is the most useful metal on the periodic table. That's why it's money. Now, it has great characteristics that make it better money than other commodities, but absent its intrinsic value, it couldn't be money. And Bitcoin has no intrinsic value. It's just a digital string of numbers. And all of this is just a bunch of hype.
Anything could be money, right? On the island of Yap, they used to have big stone money. Anything could be money if people use it as an exchange. And this is the thing.
But that's because
But here's the thing, though. You have to admit, Bitcoin is on the rise. Wall Street has embraced it. And this is just a tiny speck. I mean, could you imagine, Peter, at the rate of recognition, if Bitcoin keeps going at this rate, it's hard to deny it could go substantially higher.
Now, I just told you it's been dropping for 2.5 years. That's when it made
an all-time high recently.
And I think that decline is going to accelerate. It does not keep going up. They suckered in a bunch of people. Wall Street didn't embrace it. They're just trying to make a buck off it. I mean, these big Wall Street firms aren't buying any Bitcoin with their own money. This is their customers' money that are dumb enough to buy it. They're just booking the bets. They're operating the casino. They're not at the blackjack tables or the roulette wheels. That's their customers that are doing that.
Natalie wants to jump back in.
You know, if you look at the short term, Bitcoin is going to be volatile. But if we zoom out, Bitcoin has outperformed gold. In fact, when Hamas attacked Israel, since then, Bitcoin is up 125% and gold is up only 27%. So let's really look at the numbers that we're seeing. And the best thing about Bitcoin is, again, no one controls the ledger, whereas gold is really vulnerable to centralization and top down control, which is why we need a system that is a neutral place to store your wealth. We need a neutral system and protocol.
Even compare.
That is Bitcoin
Peter,
for the
why
digital
can't someone own both? Why can't someone have exposure to both?
Yeah, well, first of all, Bitcoin has outperformed everything. So don't compare it to gold. It's outperformed stocks, real estate, bonds, collectibles.
Happy Big Wednesday, freaks. It's your host, Odell, here for another Citadel Dispatch, the interactive live show focused on actual Bitcoin and freedom tech discussion. That clip was from Fox Business this week. It was Gold Shill Peter Schiff, failed banker, against Natalie Brunell, arguing about gold versus Bitcoin. And Schiff came away with the beautiful takeaway that Bitcoin has outperformed everything, which I thought was fucking hilarious, and I needed to capture that moment. I also just wanted to point out that it's a little bit weird measuring Bitcoin returns based on when Hamas attacked Israel. I don't know why she used that as the the time frame. But anyway, freaks, I have a great show lined up for us today. We're going to be talking to two prolific developers, contributors in the Nostr ecosystem. We have Stuart Bowman here. How's it going, Stuart?
How's it going?
Thank you for joining us.
Absolutely.
And we have HZRD149. How's it going, Hazard?
Great. Excited to be here.
So you guys are both working on a lot of different things in the Nostr ecosystem. You both have clients that you've developed. Stuart has satellite.earth. Hazard has Nostr, one of the best named clients in the ecosystem. And then you both have been working on interesting ways of kind of solving, maybe solving is the strong word, but solving the problem of Nostr is a text-first protocol, text-first comms protocol. It makes it very easy to share text around the world and interchange text-based communications, but it doesn't necessarily solve the media problem. And you guys have both kind of come at it from different angles, but also very similar angles. Hazard has this new protocol out called Blossom, which is pretty exciting. And Stuart has a CDN where you just like pay in Bitcoin and you can just host media files really easily. So I don't know what we're going to talk about today, but I think we're going to talk about many different things. I guess a good place to start is the freaks know I just keep talking about Nostr. Why do you guys put so much energy and time and focus into such a nascent protocol?
I mean, I think Nostr is I feel like Nostr is the inevitable, I feel like it's basically like it's just like the fact that like you can have like a shared data layer that allows you to kind of build like a sort of like world on top of data is the thing that to me it seems like completely inevitable that you're going to have a permissionless social media layer, but I think we're like not quite as far to actually accomplishing that as it might seem, because there's kind of two halves of it. There's the cryptographic side of it, and that's kind of the easy part. It's just like signed JSON,
right?
But then there's like the hard part of it, which is I think there's two hard parts. Like the two hard parts are
there's only two hard parts.
Well, there are two broad classes of hard things, and like one broad class of hard things is like, how do we even get anyone to care about this? And then that's kind of like where most of like the dev energy is on Nostr right now. It feels like is like people trying to figure out like, you know, how do we get people to actually use Nostr? But then I think there's like this little sneaky third thingy that is not really been addressed yet, which is like, how do we actually own our actual infrastructure? Because that's kind of required for sovereignty as well as the cryptographic aspect. And, you know, Nostr like succeeded, or I should say like Nostr actually got off to a good start because it had this like really like dirt simple, like, like dead simple, like, like relays, standardized transport layer, just a dumb pipe, sends and receives, signed JSON. Like that was a super smart idea. But I think to make Nostr like stronger in a way that it can actually resist like a state level attack, you need to have some kind of peer-to-peer redundant archival recovery mechanism thingy. And to be clear, not peer-to-peer in terms of the delivery of the data, but peer-to-peer in terms of the archival async stuff. And that's something I have to give a lot of credit to Hazard on this point. Because I've been obsessed with like BitTorrent for a super long time. And when we were in Madeira, Hazard convinced me that BitTorrent is actually not the solution to deliver data, but it's an amazing solution for data portability. So
it fixes the Nostr. I mean, to your points, it's the redundancy that is the missing piece, you might say, or like that's the more important piece that we didn't see before. Because like BitTorrent doesn't. And I'm going on a limb here because I don't know. I've been around long enough to know the BitTorrent protocol, but like you could make an argument that the BitTorrent protocol doesn't work because it's peer-to-peer, but it works because everyone has the file. Like that's why it's censorship resistant, not because it's talking peer to peer.
Right.
However, to answer your original question, Odell, yeah, like to be like why I'm here, like why interested in Nostr. Never really got too much into much social media, especially Twitter and whatnot. But like now that Nostr's kind of kicking off, getting off the ground and all that, like it is the possibility. It's almost it's a hackable social media protocol. There's almost no end to what you can do, and not necessarily build. Like that's the exciting part. Is like there is almost no end to what we can build. But the cool part is like for everything you build, you can look at it in a different way. So like you can take like the zaps are a perfect example. Like we have zaps on every client, but you can build like a zap dashboard. You can start like pulling analytical data out of this network. And like not that since the data is open, it's a network that like there's so much analytics and so many interesting things you can run on the network that you would never be able to do with Google, Facebook, any other closed network.
I love it. Guys, this is a one-man show here. I just do it all myself, and I forgot to play our intro music, so we're going to play the intro music. I knew something was missing when I did the intro. This is episode. What episode is it, freaks? And we've done like 150 dispatches. I've never forgot the intro music, so I felt like I had to do it. Guys, do you think we sound a little bit crazy when we explain why Nostr? Is it Nostr or Nostr?
I think it's like Nostr, because it's like it's Portuguese. It's like no, right?
You have to channel your Fiat Jaff when you say it.
Exactly.
I just use them interchangeably.
Yeah.
It's
well, doesn't nos mean like? Doesn't it mean like us?
Yeah, us. But I think that wasn't his reason. I don't think
it wasn't.
I think that was like we pretend that after the case.
Oh.
It also sounds like it in Spanish. Us.
Right.
I mean, I guess there's a lot of similarities. We can say that. We can just pretend that's why he named it that. I think Fiat Jaff was just incredibly lazy and was just like notes and other stuff transmitted by relays and just made it an acronym.
Yeah, well, in that case, it's karma, the fact that it's an STR at the end and it fits so well onto every single client name.
It does not fit well. I was like half joking when I said your client name was a good name. Like, I mean, no strudel. Like, does that get people excited?
Nope. UI doesn't get people excited.
I'm like a big anti-Stern name guy. But anyway,
in that case, I got the best name.
I feel like I kind of broke the flow of conversation. You guys are both at Sovereign Engineering in Madeira. How was that? What was that experience like?
I mean, I feel like I got about 6 months of thinking done in about 2 months, or maybe like even like a year's worth of thinking, because like the ability to just like info dump on somebody is and then have it be like reflected back at you is like super valuable. Actually, I mean, Pablo and Gigi and Martin did like such an amazing job putting it together, and I think they like their whole one of like the main things was like the missions was basically just like how do we prevent people from like building the wrong thing for like 5 years before realizing that it's the wrong thing. And so when you're around people who are like capable of just like shooting down your ideas, it's the most valuable thing in the world.
Oh,
so
that was huge. Yeah, I mean, to sum it up in a few words, like life-changing. But to be more specific, if the goal was, which I think that was one of the goals, to like prevent people from building the wrong thing, it definitely helped with that, because everyone there was so smart, knew everything, and so you come up with this idea that's like half baked, or you haven't thought it through all the way, and then it was it was more beneficial to just throw it out to the group and mention it to a few people and start talking than it was to like try to finish thinking about the idea yourself. Because then it would just be, yeah, it was incredible conversations for coming up with ideas. And that's how Stu and I basically, I think day one we started talking about torrents. And then it was pretty quick after that we decided that we figured out that like it probably wouldn't work with torrents and we need something else.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, software engineering is pretty crazy as a concept. I mean, I haven't met Martin yet, but both Gigi and Pablo are absolute fucking legends, and I have the honor to talk to them all the time. But like just this idea of getting, you know, some of the brightest minds in Nostr all together in this little island in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. I know my oceans. With like no money attached. It was like an accelerator program without like a fund.
Yeah.
I don't think that's ever existed before. Like how like I think this is one of the things that people are sleeping on about Nostr is just this like mission focused, like aligned group of people that are just like, fuck you, like I'm gonna build this shit. And I'm gonna like uproot my life and just go to this random ass fucking island and spend 3 months.
Yeah.
And try and do the thing.
I feel like that's the thing that sets the Nostr dev community apart, is that we actually like do things. Like we actually like it's like a we're trying to actually like kind of build something and see if it works. And the fact that everyone doesn't like the fact that we don't have like $1 billion is, I think, a great kind of accelerant, because it makes it to where you don't have the luxury of just kind of sitting around and trying to figure out ways to like degrade the pile of capital that you've accumulated. Because I've been to like different like last summer I went to this decentralized web thingy out in the San Francisco forest, and it was like all these San Francisco people, and like it wasn't Nostr focused. There was like some Nostr thing there, but it was just a whole like grab bag of a bunch of like shitcoin protocols and stuff like that. And so I was like, yeah, whatever. There's probably some smart people here, and there were honestly a lot of really interesting people, but I couldn't get away from the sense that the mission of most of these projects, like Filecoin, for instance,
right,
years and years and years ago, when I first heard about it, I was like, oh, that makes total sense. Well, the reality of Filecoin is that they raised like $1 billion, and now all they've done in the last 5 years is like sell buy like massive piles of like merch and everything. And I'm like, well, I'm glad that like the free coffee mug that I got was somehow paid for by your ICO in like 2017. Like it is truly like trickle down shitcoinery. Like it just infects everything, and the Nostr does not suffer from that problem.
It's really interesting because I think, I think the Nostr dev community has probably been the first developer community to like spawn or to come out of like the Bitcoin movement, you might say. Like because almost all the developers who started working on Nostr stuff either came from Bitcoin or were Bitcoiners and weren't working on Bitcoin, or just had that kind of ethos. And so like it seems to have this like inexplicably almost like this core of like, I'm gonna build it and ask for permission later. Like it seems to be the only dev community that's like embodied that. And it's kind of like you can kind of relate that to like just going to an island is like, I want to do this, like I want to build this, I'm gonna do it, and then like figure it out later or ask permission later. And yeah, it's definitely the strangest dev community I've been part of or ever seen. Like the energy is, I don't know what it is.
Were you guys both Bitcoiners first?
Actually, I got into Bitcoin because of Nostr.
Oh,
so
wow.
I think I'm a bit of an exception.
You were a shitcoiner first.
I wasn't an anything coiner. I was a Bitcoiner by necessity back in 2013. I wouldn't call myself a Bitcoiner, but let's say I used Bitcoin back in the day as a currency. And I unfortunately didn't save in Bitcoin. And I've always been super, super interested in decentralized stuff. I spent years and years trying to build a WebTorrent based social media. But I've always I've been following Bitcoin the whole time, but I've never been like around other Bitcoin devs and stuff since last year, January of 2020. No, December of 2022. I found out about Nostr, and I was like, "What is this? This is signed JSON. This is the future." And then I went to Nostrica. I didn't even have a ticket. I published the first version because I've been working on Satellite for like a long time, trying to like bootstrap my own protocol and stuff. And
Right.
When I found out about Nostr, I was like initially like super mad because I was like, damn it, like someone already did this, like it's better. And so like I went through this whole like processing thing, and I finally was like, all right, nope, can't beat them, join them. So I was like, which turned out to be a super good decision actually. But anyways, I flew down to Nostrica in Costa Rica. I showed up, and I had actually published satellite.earth like the day before from the airport Wi-Fi because I had like finally got it done, and I didn't even have a ticket. But then somehow I weaseled my way in, and I met a bunch of people. And actually, I briefly met Hazard there, but like I think we talked for like a minute or something, and then but we didn't. I didn't know what he was working on at the time or anything like that. But anyways, this whole basically last 12, 14 months has been a very interesting journey for me. In the whole space. So yeah, the Madeira thing was kind of the thing that capped it off recently.
That's only because it's recently. There's a whole lot more to come.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I was like Bitcoin class of 2020, like most people. And then it was It was a ways before. I had known about it for a long time. I think I known about it like I found it like back in 2004. It was like $1,000. No, I found it when it was $1,000. Read the white paper and was like, "Oh yeah, this is the future," and then proceeded to ignore it like everybody else did.
That's what usually happens.
Yeah, it's what's the saying? You get Bitcoin at the price you deserve is very true. Yeah, it had the same when I found Nostr. What was this?
You got to be early to Nostr.
Yeah, I read there was the Telegram kind of client that had the cross-site scripting problem that I remember interacting with, and then there was Astral.Ninja at the time. Yep. But it was right before the Jack grants. That's where I'd found Nostr way before that. I think it was like 5 nips when I originally looked at the repo. Had the same reaction to Bitcoin, like read over all the nips. I was like, oh yeah, this is the future. This is going to be a big thing. Like, this is so simple, and then proceeded to forget about it until like the Jack grants, and that's when I got back into it and was like, okay, let me actually see what's going. Well, because there was activity, and that's where I was like, oh, let me see what's actually happening here.
Yeah, no, I mean the only reason I bring it up is because a lot of people, like I've only talked about Bitcoin for about a decade now, and a lot of people think that is a negative of Nostr, that it was like seeded by Bitcoiners. But I kind of I think it's the opposite. I think it's a feature, not a bug.
I agree.
And it really is. I mean, I think Hazard said it's like the first child. It's the first child of Bitcoin, right? Like a lot of early Bitcoiners, a lot of times what they said was like the biggest impact of Bitcoin, or one of the biggest impacts of Bitcoin, is that there's a whole new group of people that are ideologically like bent different, and they have access to fuck you money, and as that fuck you money becomes more robust and is adopted more, like they will go and do their thing, and there's all these knock-on effects that you can't even really comprehend or speculate on ahead of time, and Nostr feels like one of those things. And I just want to be clear to freaks, because on my rip with Callie of Cashew, I said, if you're still on Twitter, it means you don't have fuck you money. That's not an amount. That's the properties of the money you use. And if someone can't separate you from your money, you have no rulers, and you can do whatever the fuck you want. And that's one of the beauties of Bitcoin, and I think that is pulled over into Nostr in a big way.
It's cool too, because that ethos, or that you might say what Nostr inherits from Bitcoin, it's not just, or it seems to not be just the like the ethos or the mentality of the people working on it, or the mentality of the people coming to it, and the values they hold, but it's there's a definite like software design or architecture that's like been inspired by Bitcoin. Like the best way I could put it was like it's like there's like a focus on simplicity, which is not exclusive to Bitcoin, but
simple and robust.
Yeah, but it's not for the sake of being simple. That's like Nostr's designed simply not because it wants like for the sake of simplicity. It's like with Bitcoin, where it's designed to be simple so that it can spread quickly, and not like spread in the minds of the developers quickly.
Right.
It's such an interesting. That's what caught me finding Nostr initially, was like, or as I've kind of like learned more and more about Nostr, that's what's really impressed me, is like this concept of not simplicity for simplicity's sake, but simplicity for like growing the community and spreading the idea. As I said, it seems to be inherited from Bitcoin.
So enough about Bitcoin. You guys went to sovereign engineering. You came out with a renewed focus. What is that focus? What are you guys working on right now? What is your perspective on Nostr? Where are we heading?
Well, right now we're both working on the satellite stack, because like I said, satellite's been a web client, but now me and Hazard are building a kind of like the simplest way to describe it would be like Discord, but for Nostr, because like I think somehow like a Discord server has become like everyone has a Discord server now, like even like large companies. It's like join Discord. Like it's like somehow this thing that was like for video games became like the de facto group app, right? So it's kind of like a Discord server is not really like a server. It's like, I don't know how many servers Discord has, but it's not your server.
Right. So completely closed source, controlled.
Yeah, a Discord server is just like a term that means it's your little space, but you don't actually own the server. So, I think Nostr can do that, because this kind of ties into the whole like owning your infrastructure thing. The new version of Satellite, or I should say, it's not like the new version, but like the deeper version of Satellite is going to be a Discord server that is just a server that you actually, it's like if a Discord server was actually your server, and you had all the benefits of cryptographic identity, and the ability to host your own media. And that's why the Blossom thing is like super, super, super important, is because like if you don't host your own media, then you can't really own your like infrastructure. And if you don't own your infrastructure, you're not really sovereign. And so I'm really interested in trying to project this idea of self-sovereignty into a group level of organization. Because like Nostr, like I sort of almost think of it like there's like this analogy where like, you always say like, not your keys, not your coins.
Right.
Bitcoin. Well, the Nostr version of that is like, not your INSEC, not your notes. And then I think the community version of that is like, there's two things. It's not your INSEC, not your community, but it's also not your infrastructure, not your community. So like because when you're communicating with people, you need to own the actual means of communication. So that it's a pretty big problem space. And I think like it sounds kind of crazy, but I really think that the end game of all this online community building stuff, community is almost too narrow of a term. It's more like an organization, or like even like a state, basically. In some like, just like from a modeling sense, it's kind of like a way of creating some type of governance or curation of some aspect of the world that is now kind of like coming to sort of eclipse the physical world that we're living in. Like, because like we're all like online.
It depends. There's a difference between a community and a state, in that the community doesn't really have governance rules. They don't really do anything outside. Like a community mostly just covers like communication between individuals, and then a governance or a company or an organization would be communication plus a direction, you might say, or something, a focus.
A permission structure.
Yeah. But like geared towards action, mostly, yes. I'd imagine.
Yeah, and there's this kind of paradox in, I think, the way that, like, there's this kind of polarity between these totally decentralized things and then centralized hierarchical things. And I think that the integration of those two opposite things is a really powerful kind of idea, because you kind of need hierarchies in some way to get things done. Because, like, you see groups that have effective leaders actually are able to accomplish things, because otherwise, like, corporations wouldn't be structured that way, or like teams wouldn't be structured that way, or there's some kind of mission aligned leader that is good for a person, good for a group. But then, like, the danger with that type of architecture is that you can't get rid of the bad leaders, and so
Right.
you need to somehow have this architecture where you have these little hierarchies that are embedded in a decentralized context, where, like, the context itself serves as the final judge of who's doing a good job. And the way you can create forkable communities on Nostr is super powerful. And I've been, me and Hazard both implemented this NIP72 thing, which was an attempt to create these forkable Reddit style communities on Nostr. But I found it quite limiting to have those communities only defined abstractly while still being rely on other people's infrastructure. So I think there's a need to sort of marry and integrate the infrastructure of the community with the permission governance of the community, so that when you fork, you can, like, almost like a migrate or export all this stuff to a new server. So you can jump infrastructure. And there's a lot of really interesting stuff.
The infrastructure is definitely the key there, because, yeah, I mean, I don't think I've ever, the NIP72 communities, we did both, I think. No, there's other clients that implement NIP72 communities, but both of our clients have, like, the kind of Reddit focus of the community. And yeah, but both of the, it probably wouldn't be a stretch to say that both of our clients don't implement it well. And yeah, I think, as you mentioned, Stu, like that, the infrastructure is the key. It's not something you can, because NIP72, the way the communities are structured in the NIP and whatnot, is it kind of ignores infrastructure. It's just like, oh, it's going to be published to a relay, a few relays, and then it'll be loaded from those a few relays. But yeah, there's something about it, like, you can't ignore infrastructure.
What is NIP, like, for people that are not following all the NIPs? What is NIP72?
Moderated communities on top of Nostr.
But what does it dictate? It dictates, like, a specific set of relays that community is using, or
It's like subreddits on Nostr.
okay.
Yeah, it's a kind of a moderated context on Nostr. And yeah, it specifies the relays that the community exists on, but there's nothing specialized about the relay. The relay is just used as kind of a data store or an event store.
Yeah.
Got
So
it.
the idea with the new satellite is that you're going to have your own, like, a relay, just a community is a relay. And this is kind of like reaching way back to the original idea of Nostr, which is that there's these kind of specialized relays that are kind of groups unto themselves. And you can, of course, be in a bunch of overlapping groups, but the relay is like a central idea. And I think it was just too complicated to try to build groups on top of relays while treating them all the same. It just makes sense to actually connect the infrastructure to the group, because then you can do super cool things like with the new satellite, you'll be able to have, like, every community relay kind of has, like, a Blossom server integrated with it, so that, like, if you join a community, you can join in a community, and you can get permission to upload files onto their infrastructure, because you have to align the incentives of the person who's deciding what data gets hosted into the community and the person who's actually hosting the data. Like, those should be the same person, because if I want to start some community that hosts really questionable stuff that might be illegal, I can't ask another person's to host that, like, on their server. So I need to take responsibility from that. So I think that's probably a cleaner thing.
Well, it's interesting, as you mentioned, the infrastructure might not be critical to create kind of a community environment on Nostr, because NIP72 for everything it's lacking does kind of function. Well, those type of communities, they do seem to kind of function despite what it's lacking. the protocol level. But once you do add infrastructure, or you start you make infrastructure part of a community, in the sense that the community has a server, the community has, as you mentioned, too, like a blob server or something to serve the media, and all that. You can start doing a lot more once you have access to the infrastructure. It unlocks so many things, because you don't have to. The downside about relays is that it's running on someone else's computer or someone else's server, and so you're always rate limited. You're always you always have to ask permission in some sense to read and write to their relay.
Yeah.
But if you're so like that, maybe that's why the communities need like sovereign infrastructure, is so that you can. There's a lot of operations in the community that's more than just like, I want to put one event up or take one event down, and so maybe you need something where you don't need to ask permission. You just need to run something against the database. You just need to crunch some numbers without asking a relay to serve you up a few thousand events or something.
Yeah. And I think aside from the kind of like organizational benefits that come with this, there's also just like the simple thing of just trying to make Nostr just completely bulletproof. Like, because it's, I don't know how long it's going to be, but after living through COVID times, I feel like it's completely inevitable that there's going to be it's more of like a question of like when than if, that there's going to be some kind of thing where people start getting deplatformed and need to fall back to a kind of type of social media that is completely uncensorable. And I think like it's not just freedom of speech that matters, it's also freedom of association, because if you can't create groups and kind of like organize group activities and stuff, and organize movements, then you're never going to have as much political power as people who are able to do that. So you need, I guess, kind of like one of like the large part of the mission is just try to make this completely indestructible, to where like kind of like Bitcoin, where like even if the US government was fully aligned against it, good luck turning it off. I think Nostr needs to be brought to that same level of security, and right now I don't think it's quite there yet, because there's a few relays that everyone uses. They're like the main, there's like a dozen or something. I use them because my whole idea is I just want to broadcast it to the most number of people, but It wouldn't be too hard. It would still be difficult, but it would not be impossible to take down those centralized points of things. Because you also see this with BitTorrent. Like even BitTorrent trackers are centralized points of failure, and you can whack-a-mole those things, and you could degrade the utility of Nostr to the point that it wouldn't be a viable alternative with the current architecture. And I do think there's still going to be global relays in the future, but they're going to be more discovery bootstrap kind of relays that are going to point toward these more decentralized community group relays that are just like, there's like, I want there to be like 100,000 of them running on everyone's MacBook all over the world. Like, good luck turning that off. So I think that would really change. That could really, if you had just completely uncensorable media, video, voice, that 100,000 member groups, that could actually be a force in the world to project some type of power. And
well, that's the fun part about Nostr, is that, and specifically that, because I share the kind of the same vision what you mentioned, Stu, is that like the concept of borrowing, you might say, or taking the concept of a Bitcoin full node or just a private relay, or just kind of making the concept a loose concept of like a Nostr full node. Yes. And that all that means is just a backup. But the cool part is that leans into what actually makes Nostr uncensorable. Like the cool part about it is like Nostr's, it's not uncensorable because you can't take down the relays. Like it's not uncensorable because like we're talking over Tor or something, or like an uncensorable like community. Like we're talking over DNS, we can just lose the DNS name tomorrow. It's uncensorable because you can, with the cryptographic signatures, you can re-upload everything. So if you have enough backups, like it's kind of funny in that it borrows that from Bitcoin. If you have enough backups, if you have enough copies, it's uncensorable. It doesn't matter if the communication method can be cut off, because you just eventually need to reestablish communication, and now you have everything back, or the majority of it. And
So maybe you should talk about hyper DHT, because
Yeah.
I feel like that's something that is going to make the transport layer pretty bulletproof as well.
Yeah, that's we've been kind of messing around with that a little bit. Kind of the hypercore, I guess it's called kind of pair now, but hypercore, hyper DHT, and stuff like that. It's still magic. It's still magic to me, but for the purposes of like synchronizing these full nodes between each other, or just making kind of permissionless connections between these full nodes, or just honestly the utility of it, the ability to have a I guess I should explain what it is from what I've seen. Hypercore and the pair stack, from what I've seen and what I've read up to this point, is kind of a it's kind of peer-to-peer application architecture with like data storage built in and peer-to-peer synchronization built in and all that stuff. I have not looked too much at that level of it. I've mostly gone down to the lower level of the DHT, which is the way the hyper nodes actually make connections to each other. And that's honestly what I think is the coolest part. Is it's almost a the hyper DHT is, it's a little, I'm not sure how it works, but it's a little program. It's a little Node.js package that will allow you to basically hole punch to another piece of software based on a public key. So you can effectively have public key, these nodes that advertise themselves to the network under a public key, and then they can just make a direct connection with each other without any DNS in the middle, without anything. And it seems to work very well. Like I said, it's kind of magic to me at this point until I can understand the networking layer more. But it's a really cool technology.
Yeah, to answer the question in the chat, it is open source. The whole, like, I don't know about Keat pair, but like the actual hypercore hyper DHT stack is open source. It's just a DHT hole punching thing, and it has been around for a long time, but it seems to work. I mean, I think just being the ability to make a connection is, I just love the idea of having an alternative to DNS, because like DNS like has a dependency on the government. Like the US government is one of like the packages that DNS depends on. So like you can't exactly rely on it as a long-term solution if your DNS can get just rugged, So, and we haven't seen that yet, but it's sort of like, I haven't heard a good logical reason like why we should just trust DNS is never going to get, like deplatformed, because 5 years ago, it would have sounded crazy to think that people would get like deleted from YouTube for saying certain things, whatever. So
Right.
It's just like the Overton window is eventually going to shift there, and that's going to happen. But what I love about the having Nostr as like the kind of signaling layer is that you don't have to have DNS be like hard coded into a group. The DNS can change all the time, and then as long as you have a Nostr event that represents the community, you can just publish a new version of that event to Nostr and just switch the DNS location. Or
So you're using like Nostr as the negotiation kind of layer.
Discoverability.
It's the point of entry.
Discoverability.
Exactly. Yeah. Like
Because
yeah.
all you need to get people connected is you need a way for them to discover each other, which Nostr is obviously really good at that.
Right.
As you mentioned, like Stu, you just build an event that is represents like, this is the discoverability event for the community, and then under that you list all the ways that you can connect. And it could be, DNS is the fastest, simplest right now, but one of the options might be like a hypercore pub key that you can connect to, or it doesn't even have to be limited to hypercore. I've actually looked a little bit into like I2P, and that has a very similar kind of permissionless DNS system where you can just, without asking anybody, start up a server that has an identity, serve stuff from it, connect to other servers that have identity, and then you could even, if you wanted some pain, you could even like talk over Tor, and it has the exact same type of system where like permissionless domains. And so really all you need is like discoverability plus a permissionless way to talk to each other.
So let's just pull it back for a second. I2P to me has been hyped for a fucking decade now. Like, why hasn't I2P become a thing? Like, what is the...
I'm going to say something controversial here.
Nice.
Something ignorant. Because it was written by Java developers. If
Okay.
you've looked at the UI for the I2P router, it is very hard to understand. I believe it has a full email client in it. I believe it has a full chat client built into it too, and I do not know how to use either of them. There's a really great project called I2PD, which is a re-implementation of the router in, I believe, C or C++. That project seems really good. But I think I could, to answer your question, I think there's two reasons. Like, my biased reason is that it's written by Java developers, and they seem to have a tendency to write really complicated code. And then I think it was missing, like a lot of other peer-to-peer networks were before, that special sauce that Nostr has, which is just an identity system.
Right.
Because if you're trying to connect to the entire world, the entire, like, if you're just opening up your computer to the entire world, basically, like, that's the most peer-to-peer thing you could do, is just open up your IP address and plug straight into the internet. It's just full of spam, and there's no way you can tell what's not spam without an identity system.
Yeah, I think the in some ways, the web of trust that Nostr is sort of like percolating up to the surface, or like maybe like the web of trust that's like kind of like distilled from Nostr, is going to be like the most foundational base layer for a lot of things, including infrastructure.
Yep.
Because infrastructure, like as you mentioned, spam is a big problem. You can't have, like, if you don't have a web of trust, you can't really have nice things. But one of the things that web of trust allows you to do is be like, maybe I'm only going to make a connection to someone who has is followed by someone I follow or something like that. And that right there enables you to actually have like nice things. So
yeah, people have been like trying to make webs of trust a thing for fucking ever. And like Nostr, like I've said this before, like we're ship posting our way to like the first real global web of trust.
Yep.
Yeah,
I think so
and
too.
it's the as an engineer, because like I had played with PGP, which is the most notable one that had tried to build a web of trust, and it's so funny how this half broken protocol is achieving something that like cryptographers and programmers have been like dreaming about for almost the invention of cryptography. And it I don't know how. Like I said, we're just shit posting and we're building this network somehow via that.
The ship posts were a requirement.
Yeah, it unironically, it seems to be the case that like the stupid kind of broken / just let's have fun and break things was like somehow required.
Well, I think that it's like pointing at the fact that social activity is the only way to produce signal. Because let's say there's signal, if you just find signal as things humans care about. Well, you can't, okay, you can try to like, you can have the Encyclopedia Britannica model, which is like, these people know what you should care about. Here's the thing. Okay, great. You could have the Wikipedia Wikipedia editor model, which is like, we're just going to use mainstream media as the signal source of things that are real, things that we should care about, but without it. So what's happening with anytime you curate content is you're at best, you're kind of like proxying some existing source of curation into your data set. But something like a subreddit or Discord server is an attempt to kind of like aggregate or produce or spin up a little pool of social capital that can be sort of derived from the interactions that happen on that thing. So Nostr itself right now, the patterns of interaction are actually sort of like producing a kind of signal. And I don't think it really matters how you distill that signal. There's a million ways to do that. You could have a really simple algorithm like the max number of follows, but there's probably more complex ways to do it. But it doesn't really matter. That is the gold right there. The gold is the kind of...
The key is the signal. The key is the signal. It doesn't matter how you represent it or distill it.
Yes.
Because like the kind 3 event is how we've distilled the signal in Nostr, how we've distilled the web of trust out of like the signal we're getting out of Nostr. And it's kind of a bad implementation. But yeah, it's sorry, I had a point about that. But yeah, the key is the signal. The key is the signal, because you can't, there's like, web of trust means nothing if it's a web of trust between like digitally native AI bots and identities. Like, it only means something if it's a connection between people in the real world, or if it mirrors something that could be a human interaction. Like, it means nothing to us if it's connections that aren't like human connections. And yeah, oddly enough, kind of your point, Stu, like about signal and whatnot. It seems like Nostr seems to be working to build or like represent the human web of trust on the network, purely because like its implementation of literally the connections between people is frictionless. Like, to update your kind 3 is like one action, and then now you've updated your. So there's something about like reducing the friction that makes the signal higher.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think that's like probably the most, the example I always use to kind of illustrate this is couchsurfing.com, which was like the greatest. I think it was like the greatest website ever. And like, so, basically what couchsurfing.com was it was a thing where you could just, it was really active like around like 2010, 2011. You could go to a new city and you could make a request to stay at someone's house, and they would like let you sleep on their couch.
It was like the precursor to Airbnb, right?
Exactly. It was like the free, like, dirtbag version of Airbnb, and it was amazing. And it was like around like 2014 or 2015, they sold out to like I think like a private equity firm that started put like a really big paywall on it to try to kind of, I guess, make their money back or something.
Monetize it.
Yeah, and it sucked because it was like a tragedy that this data set that had been built
too much
up,
friction suddenly.
yeah, like it was like a
system.
tragedy that data set got destroyed. And like, I always, one of the things I've been thinking about is that like when you have any kind of web of trust, it is effectively deflationary to an economy, because you can do things like, okay, if I can go to a new city and use my past history of interactions to stay at someone's house for free, I just saved money on a hotel room. And not only that, but I also gained the benefit of the people I was going to meet and stuff like that. And so I think it's like one of the best ways of selling like Nostr to non-Bitcoin, non-tech people is just like almost like the kind of like social capital angle, and just say like, isn't that just like a kind of dangerous? Isn't it bad that all these big reservoirs of social capital are just dangling by this little thread, that it's just like one decision away from getting kind of invalidated? And Nostr is like this long-term permanent ratchet of social capital accumulation that is really never, I don't know how to erase it.
And I mean, now with the introduction of LLMs too, like I think a lot of these centralized platforms have started to realize how much value their data set is, right? Which is why we're starting to see like Reddit and Twitter, all the walled garden, like the walled gardens are becoming, the walls are growing. They're making it more difficult. I don't know how many people out here are listening to this that maybe don't have a Twitter account, but sign out of Twitter and try and click a tweet link. And all you get is the bare minimum. All you get is just the single tweet. You can't see any of the replies. You can't see any of the quotes. You can't click the profile. You can't do any of those things. Try going into Reddit with a VPN enabled and no account. It's very, very difficult. You cannot see anything that's going on there. They like pop up this like disclaimer that's like, whoa, partner, like you don't have access. And they're all starting to do this. I mean, the one exception being TikTok, because the CCP probably has ulterior motives and just wants that to be kind of open playground so people can see it in a guest profile. But the majority of centralized social platforms are building these massive walls because they realize what you post there is the product. The data set is the product. That is the value. That's the equity that company has. And meanwhile, Nostr is basically doing the exact opposite. It's like broadcasting out to the world I like this idea of the ratcheting data set. It's like just growing.
Yeah.
It's just constantly growing. To pull it back again, so on the vein of I2P, BitTorrent, it's a protocol that I loved and used for years. It worked. It got the job done. I think probably a lot of engineer types were like, nah, this thing is like half broken. But it fucking worked. Like you wanted a movie or something, like you could get the movie.
Yeah.
Why is BitTorrent not the solution?
I think it's part of the solution.
It doesn't have identities. There's no web of trust. It's a great, fantastic, and you said it is probably half broken, but it is as far as functioning goes, it is a fantastic like peer-to-peer file sharing network. You can get so much from it. It does suffer for smaller files. Getting smaller cat pictures is a little bit difficult off of BitTorrent, but I think it just lacked an identity system because you can't get past the spam without like sovereign provable identities, like some sort of cryptographic identities. You can't differentiate not even like humans from bots, because that's not the important part, but like who is in my network and who is not, because you can't connect to the entire world. It's too big. You need to pick a smaller data set. And so I think I wouldn't say that's why BitTorrent doesn't work, but I think that's why it's not the solution that we're looking for going forward. Is it lacks identities and it lacks a way of like not connecting to the entire world.
Okay, so like where does Blossom, we're about an hour in, where does Blossom come into play here? What is Blossom?
Yeah, okay, I guess we can talk about that or run over it real quick. Blossom it came out of like Stu and I's discussion in Madeira for like 2 months. I forget how many talks we had about this and how many crazy ideas we did, but it came out of, I believe the core of the conversation was like, what does it look like to make users media on Nostr? What does it look like to make that media move like events do? Because the events in Nostr, like there's many reasons, but you can never really figure out why, but they have a tendency to just just kind of crawl throughout the network. You'll post something on a private relay, and then in like a week or so, it'll pop up somewhere else, and it'll eventually get. And so our conversation was like, what does it look like to make media do the same thing? Like, what would it take to do that? And so we kind of ended up like on these hash addressable content is you have to have an ID for a file to be able to talk about it, because a URL is a really bad identifier. It changes all the time and it can break. So you need like an identifier for the file, which is like SHA-256 of the file. That's kind of, there's many programs that use that. BitTorrent kind of does, but it has its own system for that. And then, and so Blossom is trying to like figure out how to, it's really simple. It's how do you retrieve or how do you talk to multiple servers about the same file?
Okay.
So that just like we talk to multiple relays about the same pub key or multiple relays about the same event, it's just this kind of the same concept with, how do you talk to multiple servers about the exact same file, because you know what you're looking for, you just don't know where it is. And so the Blossom spec itself is, it's a set of 5 different endpoints for an HTTP server, and how to implement each endpoint and how it's expected to behave so that so a Nostr user can upload media to the server. They can see what media they have uploaded to the server. They can delete the media, and then they can retrieve the media by its hash, basically its universal ID. And as far as the technical side of things, like that's kind of it.
So like the idea is, so what it comes down to with hosting media, photos, but image files, but even video files are probably the harder problem. As you get like size increases in what data you're sharing, it becomes more of an issue because with size comes cost. The main concern, the main issue historically has been almost one of liability, right? Like this idea of like, where are you storing it? What, like, how are you handling who decides to keep the file with you? We've talked a lot about communities here. We've started a physical community here in Nashville called Bitcoin Park. We have our own relay for Bitcoin Park members. It's mostly, I think it's at this point, it's like mostly used as like a shared backup.
Yeah.
To be honest, like I don't think anyone's like reading from it to see specifically like what Bitcoin Park members are saying. But that's subsidized because we already have like yearly dues for that to be a member of Bitcoin Park. Like you pay to be a member of Bitcoin Park, you get access to the facility. The relay is this bonus. But is my understanding of Blossom correct that this idea is right now, most people that are like sharing a video on Nostr are just choosing a server, right? Like they're just choosing a server. They're going to store this video on the server. They're going to post their URL, right? That's like .mp4 or .png or something like that. I think, Primal is probably an interesting vertical stack example here where like it's just at Primal's web server, which is probably AWS or some shit. And then they're just storing the .png for you. And then that event is just getting spread around, and everyone needs to hit that web server to see that image. With Blossom, we hash the file. The hash is unique. Because the hash is unique, and that's just how hash functions work, that file can then be hosted on 10 different servers or 15 different servers, and your client is like kind of dynamically choosing the most performant one or something like that to fetch that file from. And is that like the basic concept?
Yeah. So yeah, it is all based on, it is all based on the hash, which is not a new idea.
Right.
IPFS has the same idea, a little bit more complicated hash, but has the same idea. Like if you have this universal ID for a file, it is no longer stuck on a single server. It can in theory live on multiple servers. And so, yeah, but it can't live on every server.
The problem set being like, at the end of the day, if Milan of Primal decides that he doesn't want my PNG there, it doesn't matter that you have my event. You have my signed note that has this link to primal.net/blah blah blah .png. If he deletes the file, you just have a fucking dead link and you can't see anything, right? That's the problem we're trying to solve.
Yeah, that is the problem. The best solution, and this is kind of in the Blossom spec, the best solution is the simplest solution seems to be just to put the hash in the URL so that when that link does go down, because it will go down, is the way the internet works.
Every link goes down eventually, right?
The internet has an odd decaying factor to it. But yeah, so when the link goes down, you still have that universal ID of the file. And then the idea is that because it's in the context of the pub key, this is the oddly simple and efficient part of probably the only efficient part of the Blossom idea is that because you posted it in a Nostr note, you have this pub key. This pub key can then broadcast an event, kind of like the NIP65 or the relay list, where it's an advertising of what servers I post my media to, what servers I publish my data to. So if your PNG goes down and I get the hash from the URL,
right,
then all I would have to do is go to your pub key, use the Nostr discoverability layer, figure out what media servers you post, and then start talking to specifically those, because those are the ones that are most likely to have your media, similar to relays. Because if I got the hash and then I started to talk to the entire internet, it might be a week before I find that file. And that is way too long of a loading time. And so, yeah, there's kind of a combination of, because it's not just the hash that makes it work. It's the hash plus Nostr and the identities.
Like a
that
signed
have them.
list of potential servers to narrow
Exactly.
your set.
Yeah, and so that's because I believe, I mean, everyone kind of knows or has seen the article that Fiat Jeff has written about IPFS, and I believe that was one of, well, I don't know if that was one of his criticisms, but one of my main criticisms of IPFS that we might share is that,
Yeah, we've shat on I2P, we've shat on BitTorrent, now let's shit on IPFS.
yes, controversial, is it takes too long. It takes too long to load stuff, and the reason why is not because like it's not well made. It probably is well made. It's that it's searching the entire internet. Like it's the search area is massive when you're looking for this like specific file. And the cool thing about Nostr is, well, we can get a universal ID for a file, but in the context of Nostr, we have these identities, we have these pub keys, we have this social network, but mainly the pub key. And if I'm looking for a file that you posted or a PNG that you posted and it's not there anymore, I don't have to search the entire internet anymore. I can go again, like kind of figure out where you post your media, kind of scope it down to the public key.
Yeah.
And now I only have to search a small portion of the internet instead of the entire internet. And so that back to my kind of previous point I talked about earlier about like why torrents might not be the way, or probably is not a good solution going forward, is it's exactly that. Like you need the identity, because without the identity and without the connections that the identity provides, you're left trying to search the entire world for that one thing you want. And it's it's incomprehensibly large search area.
I see in the chat Friends app telling me to talk about something. Or maybe you should talk about that, Hazard.
Yeah, he's asking, Friends app's asking you to ask Hazard to talk about bounties for hashes. I mean, I was going to bring this up. I mean, one of my like left curve IQ issues with IPFS is this idea that it's kind of just based off of altruism to a degree, which is what BitTorrent has been based off of for decades and continues to work. But there's no like payment scheme. There's no financial incentive for people to host files. I know Justin Sun bought BitTorrent for an insane value and tried to monetize it with Tron. I have no idea what happened with that. I know I continue to use BitTorrent and never interact with Tron whatsoever. But is this bounties aspect have something to do with some kind of financial incentive to have popular files? Is there any aspect to that in Blossom?
Well, there's nothing in Blossom, and that was kind of intentional, is try to put nothing in there outside of the bare minimum. But it could definitely be enabled by it, because and it might even work with BitTorrent, but Blossom is a little bit simpler of a protocol. But I think the idea was originally, like, Stu, you originally came up with the idea, but like the whole concept of like, if we're going to, we have this universal ID now, and if we're going to start storing it in multiple places, you know, like if the single server is not the single source of truth anymore.
Right.
And then we have Nostr, which is a great discoverability layer and a great communication layer. There's nothing really stopping you from just like putting a bounty up, or like it would be like making a Twitter post or just a post on Nostr and saying, hey, I'm looking for this particular file. I'm willing to pay somebody if they have it. And you can just up the bid, or you can kind of change it until you get the community. And so it's really just using it could just be, I don't know if it's a solution to anything, because I don't know if people want files that badly, but it could just be it'd just be like using the Nostr layer to advertise, I'm looking for this thing.
I need this hash. I will pay you if you give me access.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like a bounty hunter for data, sort of like you're kind of like, I think it really speaks to the idea of how Nostr is like kind of like this API to a market in some sense, where if you want something, you can send it to just like a regular like Git endpoint, like cdn dot whatever / SHA-256, and if the CDN has that file, it sends it back to you. If it doesn't have that file, it can kick off this whole Ruby Goldberg machine in the back end, talk to like 100 different people, put out bids, eCash, Lightning, just like, who even knows? Black box, okay? Somehow,
Depends on how desperate you are.
yeah, how desperate are you? And there's all kinds of like, I made like a whole slideshow about this that was like way too complicated, and I had to cut it down because especially when we start involving eCash, like the number of like schemes that you can come up with for like forwarding payment and all this stuff,
Right.
It's insane. But like a basic idea is that it's like, hey, I can use Nostr as the interface to this market. Somebody get me the hash. The first person to upload it is going to get paid by the CDN. Okay, so then the user, from their perspective, all they see is a long-running GET request that maybe takes like 10 seconds, and then they get their file. Hey, still faster than IPFS. So, and then the next time they hit the endpoint, it's already in the bucket, so it goes fast. So I think that's really interesting because the satellite communities, are almost putting like another layer on top of that, where you can kind of like sort of have an inkling of where that data might be to look for it in the first place. Because like if someone's a member of a community and they have permission to upload the stuff there, maybe you hit those buckets associated with that community. So I feel like there's a lot there that you could just, yeah.
There's kind of already it doesn't involve an eCache or Lightning or Zaps or anything, but I've made an implementation of like a Blossom server, that being like a file server that conforms to the Blossom spec. So it lets you request files it lets you request files based on their hash. And there's already an implementation of this. So I wrote up in like 10, 20 lines of code or something. But if it doesn't have the hash, it will just connect to some random relays, and it will start looking for that hash on events. Like it'll start looking for 1063 events, which are like a Nostr file advertising event. Like I publish this file, here's where you can find it. And yeah, the server will, like with a few lines of code, connect to the Nostr relays. It'll look for the hash. If it finds it, like a proprietary URL, it'll then download it and then reserve it as the hash. And the concept of like bounty hunting with the files could just be that, with a little bit more on top, with like payment and incentivizations kind of put on top of it.
So I got three things. First of all, if you're stuck in the YouTube chat, I see some people like, what the fuck is going on screen? Like, how do I join that? That's citadeldispatch.com/stream. The second thing is, to me, like one of the big tests of Nostr is this idea of WikiLeaks on Nostr. And so like when WikiLeaks came out to me, I was a big, I've always been like a relatively large, like conspiracy head. I like, dramas and stuff like that. Movies, books. And like WikiLeaks broke all that, because it was like half of the shit, like you could just end it at chapter 1, like he just uploaded it to WikiLeaks. He just had something he needed to say, just uploaded to WikiLeaks. And I feel like Nostr hasn't had that moment yet, but like that's the real test, right? And like that requires like actual media hosting. That's not just necessarily text files. A lot of WikiLeaks was like PDFs. I mean, the big one was like that video of the helicopter, like bombing just innocent civilians in a van. You got to host that somewhere. And then the third thing is big time file hoarder. Love hosting files. Never been able to monetize them, right? And it's kind of, this idea kind of like throws the normal file hosting thing on its head, which is usually, okay, I post a dispatch. I want multiple CDNs to host my dispatch. So I go out and I pay people, right? Like I pay Primal. Well, Primal's not accepting money yet, but presumably they're going to start accepting money to host large files. I pay Satellite to host large files. Like it's the broadcaster that's paying. This is the opposite, right? This is the idea that the viewer, the consumer of the content, is going out there and being like, I need access to this shit.
Yeah.
I will pay you for this. And then all of a sudden there's a market price aspect there. That's not just like, what is disk space and bandwidth cost?
Yeah, the interesting thing about that is they're effectively paying for the same thing. They're paying for the media or the file to be more accessible, which is like you're not just. It's interesting because it kind of goes like, why can't I just host my media on my Raspberry Pi at home?
Right.
It doesn't work because if you like, there's like a cool mental model I like to think of. If you think of the internet like the media hosting sense as a mountain, and all the small devices, all your phones, all your laptops, they're all the bottom of the mountain. And all the big media hosting servers, the S3 buckets, the massive companies that host all the files, YouTubes, they're at the top of the mountain. They're the easiest, like, and if the data, and if you think of like the data, like the files as water, it kind of flows down the mountain. It has to, like, it comes from those big things all the way down to the small devices. But if you have a small file on your phone, it takes work to get it up the mountain. It takes work to put it all the way up on YouTube, to put it on these like discoverability, these massively powerful servers to distribute things. And so that work is kind of what you're paying for in this model. Like if you're looking for a file and you're putting a bounty up, you're in some, you might think like it's kind of like you're paying for the file, but what you're really, in some sense, what you're paying for is someone to do the work to get it up high enough so that you can access it. Because you can't connect to their phone directly. So they got to get it to some sort of server that you can both access and easily get it.
That's an amazing metaphor. It's like a CDN that pulls things in from the edge instead of pushing things to the edge. It's like it has this pulling function.
The monetization aspect, like there's so many ways of building this, and you got to figure out like the right way, I guess. But the monetization aspect is so much fun because I love hoarding. Like I love hoarding files.
Are we all file hoarders here?
Maybe.
But you see Kieran's in the comments. He's like, oh, I can monetize my 50 terabyte NAS.
Oh, absolutely. Probably. You just have to listen for like when somebody wants that file, and then, you need to actually do the work to get it to them. But yeah, like you can just buy like, what is it? Like 100 terabytes for $100 for 4 terabytes. Like that holds a lot of potentially monetizable content.
Yeah, what I really like is the idea that CDNs will be kind of like this acceleration gateway from between files that are hosted on a very decentralized way to people who actually are trying to load them like on their phone or something. And so the only thing that needs to get paid for is the first time it gets pulled onto it, and it can get deleted after a while. But like,
it can be like ephemeral.
Exactly, like almost like a least recently accessed cache or something like that. So you have a CDN operator, which by the way, if anyone wants to run their own version of satellite CDN, it's open source now, and you can just put an env variable that's like the number of cents per gigabyte per month, and you can set up your own lightning gated S3 bucket or Cloudflare R2 bucket. So
wait, it's in dollars? It's in cents?
It's denominated in USD, but it's charged in Lightning and the current exchange rate.
Oh, that's cool.
And it refreshes because just for unit of account stuff.
That's what you're paying AWS for or whatever.
Yeah, so you basically set I'm using Cloudflare R2 because they're both centralized, but Cloudflare R2 is great because they don't charge for data transfer, so it makes sense.
The only company more evil than Amazon.
Well, exactly. But you know what? It's good. Like if we actually want to win, we need to use the powerful CDN networks and then build in like a fallback solution. Right. Like all this decentralized stuff, like it's never going to work if you have to like wait 10 seconds for your video to start loading. So like
one's switching from TikTok if they're waiting half a minute.
These decentralized censorship resistance is like break glass in case of emergency kind of stuff. But otherwise it needs to go quick. So there's like this fallback kind of thing. So, I guess not to ramble on too long here, but to connect it to what we were talking about a minute ago, the whole idea of the edge, I really think there needs to be a way for there to be a lot of edge devices that actually back up the media. And that's one of the things me and Hazard are building with the satellite communities is it's like a desktop app that can run on an actual like MacBook that when you subscribe to a community, you download and cache and back up media files selectively, and then those are sitting on your hard drive.
That's cool.
So then if a CDN needs that file, it knows who to ask to upload that file. So it's an example of kind of welding that.
Do you get paid?
Yes, you get paid with eCash or Lightning. Exactly. And you set a market rate.
I asked the important questions.
You say like
there's a lot to build. Like
Yeah.
to be clear, like that probably won't be a oh Stu, it is your road. That's like a way down the road because like I said, we got to figure out.
Well,
It's
because
easy to say, but you could be, and like the market rate is the interesting part of like what does that even look like? Because we've never seen a market for uploading files.
Because the thing is like if it's just me posting a video of a sunset or something, right? Like people just want that to load quick. If it doesn't load quick, they're just going to scroll on past. They don't need to see my fucking sunset. No big deal, right? But if there's like a controversial video that gets posted or something like that, and you know, I personally think Alex Jones can go fuck himself, but he's a really good case study. And so like Alex Jones like releases some kind of really controversial video, and it gets censored from 80% of the internet, 90% of the internet. Like people will sit there and wait a minute and a half to watch the video. Like if there's something they need to see, they really want to see it, and they're being blocked from seeing it, then at that point, they're willing to, first of all, pay for it, and they're willing to deal with the friction of the loading times and whatnot. And so like, how do you do that gracefully, right? That's basically how you guys are looking at it.
Yeah, the gracefully part is hard. But it kind of like Stu's point, like that is the fun. I think that was the missing piece to some like censorship resistant media, is that the peer-to-peer, the censorship resistant part, the resilient part to all that, that's like break glass in case of emergency. Like we can still use S3 buckets. We can still use all that great hosting, the fastest hosting that we have. The important part is that, as you said, like you can get it when it's down, when it disappears, when it gets censored. That's when you start needing like the censorship resistant. That's when you start needing the network. The gracefully part, that's just, well, there's many ways to solve that. There's you have to get the file, and you knowing what you want and how searching the network is part of like what I mentioned earlier about having the pub key. If you know who posted it, well, you know who of your friends might have it and have talked about it. That reduces the search area, which can make getting the file you're looking for a lot faster.
I mean, if you kind of think about it, like that's what happens already, right? It's like if there's something controversial, what really happens is like it's like WhatsApp groups or Signal groups or something. It's like people are just messaging like, do you have the file?
Yeah.
Like, can you send me the file? And it's just manual text messages, like on chat apps and chat groups. Like, did you download it? Did you get it before they banned it? Share it with me.
The worst part about it is you say, do you have that file? Like that's a shared understanding of what file. You have no idea if you're talking about
right. You're not checking the hash and seeing if it's actually been modified or not. And we're entering the age of AI, so it's like relatively easy to like. There's going to be all these fake shows. I've given the AI way too much, the LLMs way too much content of me speaking. They could probably make me say whatever they want me to say.
Dude, that's another thing. I feel like almost just like the simple fact of having a hash of a file that is signed by the author of the file
is massive.
Dude, that is like the one that might be bigger than all of Nostr combined. Once the average person's like oh, like they're gonna be so freaked out the first time they see a video AI deepfake of themselves. It's gonna be like a moral panic about that. And then if you had a service that was like, look, this is a CDN, except it contains this little signature. Don't trust anything unless it has this little signature. The average person can completely understand that.
The client can just give you like a little check mark, like Odell posted this. This is what Odell was saying, not all the
craziest part. Sorry not to interrupt you guys. The craziest part about that is it doesn't have to be a Nostr client. You can take the hash of the file that you're currently watching. If you have the whole video and you grab the hash of it, and then you go to the Nostr network and be like, who has posted this hash? Oh, it's Odell. Okay. He's like connected to me in this way. So it's all good. Like you don't even have to show it like it as a Nostr. You could just put it anywhere and use the Nostr network as a lookup table for like, not accountability, but for reputation in a sense.
Yeah.
That's huge.
Yeah, the whole AI thing is really, really, really almost like kind of an accelerant on top of all these trends, I feel like, which is like good because it makes you build the infrastructure in a way that's really like defensible. So yeah, I mean, I think there's this interesting connection between trying to defend against spam and trying to find actual interesting content source of signal. It's the same problem. It's just looking at it of like, are you trying to get rid of the bad? Or are you trying to find the good and find the needle in the haystack? And like, if you're going to have, if you like even just a market for files that people want, like the files that people pay for is almost itself a trending feed of sorts, a kind of honest trending feed.
Right.
So you could,
well, the problem is, I mean, the problem I understand with zaps is like it's hard to verify. Like zaps are not verifiable.
No, but
eCache, I think we can make verifiable.
Well, maybe the BitTorrent version of this is IP addresses, like seeders, because IP addresses are actually, just edge cases, but they're kind of a scarce thing. So if you could have some type of network space, there is a kind of scarcity inherent in network topology that might be useful.
There's something more scarce than IP addresses, though. Nostr public keys and a reputation, the connections that make the connections that connect you. Yeah, but more importantly, the connections that connect you to the other random person you just met. Like that's a really small data set. So if you're looking for like who to connect to or who to get this file from or who has the most reputation in the network, if I see a random key that I have no connections with, like if I search my friends list and they have no connections and so on, then like it basically has a rank of 0, web of trust kind of stuff. But then if like I know that like Stu is, if I'm looking for a file and I see that like Stu's public key says that he has the file or he has the thing I'm looking for, then it's like, well, I don't need to do hardly any verification. I might not even need to pay him. Like we just have trust. But if I see it's like a friend of a friend of a friend, I might need to pay him. But like, I'm like, oh, okay, I can see how you connect to me. It's a really rare. It's a. To your point, Stu, about like, what'd you say? Things that are rare or things that are scarce. It's a really scarce connection.
Yeah.
There's only like a few of them. There's only a few thousand of them that if you go friends of friends. So.
Yeah. You need some form of scarcity to serve as like the backing asset to create any finite system. Like the infinities always destroy your beautiful constructs. You can't have infinities sneaking into your models. And so you need some kind of thing that brings this infinite space down into kind of like a concrete finite thing. And so, I mean, like Bitcoin just uses energy, which is like the most bulletproof physics-based form of scarcity. But there's these kind of like higher level forms of scarcity, like reputation and network topology and, maybe other things like humans themselves, human attention, something like that, that I think almost like kind of recapitulate this process of scarcity projection. And it's just Nostr is almost like very interesting, kind of like it's the social media version of like this. It's like projecting reputation, like it's projecting the scarcity inherent in human social networks onto the internet, just like Bitcoin is projecting the scarcity inherent in physics onto the internet.
Right.
So it's like, I mean, you can take an analogy too far, but I think it is an interesting lens sometimes to think about some of this stuff. It can reveal things. So I don't know. I kind of wondered for a long time, like, who were the miners of Nostr? You know what I mean? Who are the people that are like really holding the cards? I'm not sure.
The ship posters, maybe. They seem to be building the network.
It's the meme. I'm the captain now.
Yeah, maybe that's dumb.
Who are the miners?
I mean, right now it seems like the relay operators are holding the cards.
Like the 6 people running the 6 biggest relays?
Yeah.
Depends what you mean by Nostr, because if it's like the data that's being generated and built up, then it's probably the relays. But if it's like the public key social graph, then it's every single user.
It's not the relays, because I mean, look, I sympathize with, I would like to see Outbox model, a horrible name, Humble model, the Humble protocol implemented by as many clients as possible to reduce the reliance on individually large relays. But one of the cool, beautiful aspects of Nostr is simple, left left side of the bell curve concept that these notes are being broadcast, and people tend to hoard things and they share them all around. I mean, Will literally woke up one morning and deleted the Damus relay, and pretty much nothing happened. Like, I know none of my notes were lost. I don't know of any note of significance that was lost.
Yeah.
If someone wants to let me know of a note that they're missing out on when he deleted that relay, and that's probably the most, like, one of percentage wise, probably the most centralized we'll ever see in Nostr history is when he deleted that Damus relay. Like, it was probably, I don't, you can't measure that. It's unmeasurable, but
Yeah, it's
I don't think they hold that many cards. Like, I think you delete the top 6 relays and all my notes will still be there.
Yeah, I see that.
And Nostr will still work. So is there really that, like, we should have better protocols. Like we should, the client should be smarter, and we can improve them, but I just don't think it's like necessarily a kill shot. And it's way different than miners and Bitcoin. And I also will say, completely irrelevant of all of this, that it's a good dispatch rip when you have Pablo in all caps in the comments. That's when you're doing something right.
Yeah, I'm going to have to ask about this later. I'm curious about this users being the miners thing. I would like to make that more true. I would like it to be more the case that users were holding the cards of the actual infrastructure in a way that, like, Nostr kind of started off, almost took like the opposite path of Bitcoin, where like Bitcoin started off where everyone was running this really full heavy node. And then it started moving in this light client direction because out of necessity. But then Nostr, maybe because it learned that lesson, it's like, we're going to have smart clients that are smart enough to do all this like feed construction stuff, but basically they're not going to store all the data. They're basically, Nostr clients started as light clients, but so now it's like almost maybe there's a need to move in the other direction where you have more Nostr full node type stuff on devices. I mean, obviously not mobile devices, but
it's moving in the other direction.
Yeah.
So it's moving in the other direction because the user is the miner, and what is the miner doing? The miner is like deciding what goes in and what doesn't. It's the thing that's making the decisions on the network, and there's no consensus in Nostr, and so you can't have there's no consensus, so that means it's just the individual, and so the individual is kind of their own miner, making their own decisions, making their own stack of data that they've like kind of put into their own consent. So it's kind of a stretch of an analogy, but they're mining, with their attention, they're mining what they find most interesting and collecting it.
Well, this is the local cache relay thing. This is basically, if you take this to the theoretical extreme, if every user was a relay, well, that's called a peer-to-peer network. So then that question doesn't make sense anymore, whether it's the relays or the users.
But aren't we trying to avoid that?
Well, I think we're trying to avoid peer-to-peer network as the transport layer. See, and I always get in dangerous territory when I start bringing up peer-to-peer, but I think that
Fiat Java is so angry at you, right?
No. I've talked to Fiat Java about this. He originally was like hella suspicious, but I think that I'll be clear, peer-to-peer network as the transport layer is a terrible idea and will never work. However, peer-to-peer network as a slow kind of recovery archival layer is a great idea, and the two can work together. So you have like the relays and the S3 buckets, but all they need is just this little emergency system to where if that gets nuked, they can be like, hey, decentralized social network people, can you all upload this stuff again, please? And then like the added benefit of that is that if you are one of those people who are backing up stuff, you're backing up notes, you're backing up media, you have a Nostr relay and a Blossom server on your local host machine. So
I would do that.
Yeah, no, that's what the whole half.
There's dozens of us that would do that, right?
Yeah,
like
actually,
100%. Like if I could just toggle that mode, and I was just like also backing up shit.
That's the whole point of making the satellite communities a desktop app, is because the whole idea started as a local relay backup thingy, and I was like, wouldn't that be great if you had a relay that was 0 milliseconds from your app? Like it would, but then it turns out it also serves as an archival mechanism. So it's really interesting.
Well, the cool part is it serves as an archival mechanism. Not because it's funny with data backups. It serves as an archival mechanism not because you have the data, because I can download everything on the internet and have the data. It serves as an archival mechanism because I can re-upload it. Because those things are signed, there's
Right.
no questions about whether like re-uploading it or not.
I can't modify it.
Yeah, because if I download all my pictures on Facebook, I have a great archive of my feed on Facebook, but it's completely useless to anybody but me. But the cool part about Nostr is if I download everything I care about on Nostr, it's very valuable to me and maybe other people because because it's all signed, I can just put it back up. Right. There's no trust involved, and it's beautiful.
People are sleeping on it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, we're nobodies, right? But like leaders of countries, like what? They're just like posting unsigned events out to the world. Like, what the fuck are they doing? Like, they don't even realize.
Yeah.
I just feels early for some reason. It's
like literally Elon Musk can just decide, like, you're just a random world leader. You're like the fucking president of Paraguay. Don't know who that guy is. He just like, he posts a tweet. Like, Elon can just make the tweet whatever he wants it to be. And everyone's cool with it. No one realizes the issues inherent with that. I think people are going to start to realize the issues.
Yeah. And it's, as you, I think as you mentioned before, Stu, it's like AI is just accelerating that. Like it's pushing that faster and faster and faster. It's making it more and more obvious that like the communication layer and the data, like, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to have to end in some sort of self-verifiable signatures. There's no like AI is going to destroy every little bit of trust on the internet that was like inherent.
It's wonderful.
Like,
It is. It's great.
We need this.
Yes. AI. Sometimes I say that AI is the postmodernism self-destructing, because AI is the most postmodern technology that has ever existed, because all it does is ingest and re-express the entire canon of everything that's ever been made. And so it has like the ultimate ability to generate something that is based on something that already exists. But so it's completely commoditized the expression, but it has not commoditized truth. It is not commoditized, and like truth in a sort of like socially constructed way. Like, what do we want?
Well,
what are the values we're trying to do? You know,
truth in the physical world sense, because it can make up its own truth on the internet, but it has no relevance to us humans who live in the real world.
Well, also truth in the social consensus way.
Yes.
Because like one of the things you saw during the pandemic was like this function of Reddit. Because like I mean, I think Reddit has been like, I'm going to rail on Reddit for a second, but I feel like Reddit has been a psyop for like a few years now, probably ever since like 2015 or 2016.
When like Condé Nast bought it or whatever.
Yeah, probably. I mean, yeah, or whenever it became apparent that social media is no longer downstream of the world, but the world is kind of downstream of social media. Whenever that thing changed, Reddit was this thing where like it tried, you know, not only did it censor people, of course it censored people, but the main way it functioned as a propaganda engine was by creating the illusion of false consensus, where you go on there and if you're like, dude, isn't it kind of like weird that we're like all locked indoors for like 2 years for no reason? Like the ability to make people feel like they're isolated in thinking that is the main power of Reddit. It's the ability to atomize people and to prevent this kind of consensus about reality. And so you need, and AI is kind of like almost just putting that on like super max mode, where if you wanted to make it look like an entire crowd of thousands of people agreed about something, well, then you just spin up 1,000 convincing sounding AI personas. And so fortunately, actually what it's doing is AI is kind of leveling the playing field to where anyone can make it look like tons of people believe anything, because you don't know what real people are anymore. And that's actually good, because now it just means that the only playing field that exists anymore is this cryptographically proscribed web of trust area. So maybe the overall thesis is that this is good because Nostr is going to be the last social network left standing.
Yeah, it can't copy AI can't copy. It can't copy the rare things. It can't copy Bitcoin, and it can't copy cryptography.
Yeah, it can't forge a digital signature. It's like the whole asymmetric key cryptography thing. There's something really poetic about it that we're really familiar with the obfuscation aspect of encryption, to where like if we didn't have asymmetric key cryptography, we wouldn't be able to have a private sphere.
Right.
However, what's a kind of underrated observation, I think, is that without this cryptographic construct of digital signatures, which is of course just the mathematical other side of the coin, you wouldn't be able to have a public sphere. And we're in this sort of transitionary stage where the public sphere used to be just de facto defined by the hegemonic media, cable news or Reddit or like whatever Web 2 is kind of like the public sphere for in our, at least in my lifetime. But now there's like this need to construct an actual cryptographic public sphere. So I think that's going to be like, maybe the 2020s are going to be like the second version of the crypto wars. If the 90s was the crypto wars for the ability to have privacy, the 20s are going to be the war for authenticity. The
war never happened. No, the war never ended, Stuart. It's just been continuing.
Really? Maybe I'm naive. It seems like we at least won on a technical basis, though, or at least maybe just
we've won some battles.
Yeah,
some battles have been won, but the war has been continuing.
Created a little bit of space.
Yeah, I just think everyone's sleeping on this shit. Yeah. It's crazy. I feel so crazy. I feel like such a crazy person. I felt like a crazy person for many years with Bitcoin. Now, like Larry Fink's shilling it on CNBC and stuff. It's like, okay, I'm no longer crazy. And now on the Nostr side, I just feel like a fucking crazy person. But it's so fucking massive. It's so fucking massive. And I want to tell everyone who will listen, but also at the same time, like I'm just so deluded and disenfranchised from my years of Bitcoin that I also just don't give a shit. I'm just like, whatever, just build it and then they'll come eventually. They'll figure it out.
Yeah, the selling point, I feel crazy a little bit, but the part of the, I guess, there's just something unique about Nostr. There's something, and it's not just like a theoretical thing. It's like back to what I initially said before, is like it's the only network really social network we can hack on. And so like, I don't know what, like it does feel crazy to be like on this, to be almost dedicated to this network that has such a small, in comparison, such a small community.
Like how many of us are there? Are we at like 20,000 people or something?
I think monthly active users around 20,000, I think. I haven't looked in a long time, though.
It's monthly active pub keys, so who knows how many people there are.
They're all dogs. They're probably AIs.
Dude, dogs are great. I'm cool with working for them.
Yeah. Well, maybe the point is that there's no such thing as a proof of unique human. There's just humans exist on the internet as a probability distribution. You know.
I love that. I love I mean that's
you're like
that is demonstrated so well by the fact that the follower count is not consistent.
So I actually consider this for your Nostr client. People just want to see a number go up. So just mathematically increase their follower number over time.
You're like, I gained 0.25 followers.
They're just constantly growing forever. Just their follower count just constantly grows.
If they like the number going up, I could just give them a button that would create a fake pub key that would then subscribe to them and fill it full of fake information. And then they could have an extra follower.
You're going too far. You can just hard code it. You just be like, every day your follower count goes up by 1%. And just they're like, oh my God, there's so many people following me.
21 million followers that asymptotically approaches
I know it'll get ridiculous eventually. We can fix it at that point. We'll be the standard. It won't even fucking matter. Then it's just like, oh, like here's your actual follower count. But in the meantime, you just like, TikTok, you have to work for it. Twitter, you might have to work for it. On Nostr, your follower count just increases every day, forever. There's something there.
That would be a fun.
I'm putting it out there. Not involved. Not the person who did it. But someone should make a client that just increases.
I mean, how much there's got to be some people who know about basic like bot farm kind of things, like bot users, right? You can spin those up relatively easily on Twitter.
Yeah, have you seen the Nostr house people?
No.
Like they have like the AI that just responds to everything. They're all NIP5 verified at Nostr.house.
Oh, this is awesome.
Yeah, like there was a whole controversy where like I was like, oh, like ask me any question you want. Like I'm an open book. And like even the AI was like asking me questions. I was like, I'm not answering the AI questions. I was like, I know you're at Nostr.house. Like I'm not answering your questions. And then some of the questions were kind of good though.
But that like you could in theory just pay to have those things follow you if you need followers.
I know, it's super easy. I mean, that's what's a real follower?
Exactly.
But same thing with Twitter and all the centralized social medias. Like people have been paying forever. That's how Pomp became Pomp. Pomp was a nobody. And he just paid for followers on Twitter. I mean, it was like India click farms and shit, but I mean with Nostr it's like it really like pulls away the curtain, right? Like cuz I can just be a nobody and just generate 1 million npubs.
Yeah.
And like are they followers? And like what is a follower? And like really just people want to look at their profile and see the number go up though. That's what I'm saying. It's just like you just kind of
I like this product thinking.
You kind of just accelerate it. You're just like whatever, you know. We all even the plebs on Nostr have 1 million followers, you know. It's just like everyone's like it's just growing exponentially.
No, that's actually you could sort of hyperinflate attention, the attention economy in some way. Like if you really want to kill Google, just make like 1 billion AIs that click on AdWords things and they'll be bankrupt in no time.
There you go.
That's crazy.
Accelerate.
Yeah. You know, that's one of the things about that I feel like Google's goose, I feel like is really quite cooked in some sense, unless they really pivot, because someone at the cohort actually mentioned to me that I should check out perplexity.ai, which is like an open source version of ChatGPT kind of. It runs like the open source models and it uses, I think what it does is it just queries different search engines and then it has an LLM summarize the search results, and it's really great because it's like answer engine essentially. But what they do is they have this way of configuring your queries to where you can use like Stack Overflow or Reddit or whatever as like kind of like the source of signal that you use to summarize. And I think it's really, really showing you and pointing like, it's like that to me, that's like a very strong indicator that there's going to be this scramble for sources of actual signal in the world. And maybe Nostr, like being like the back-end data layer of an answer engine, might be like its main utility. And if that happens, then that will kind of like position Nostr as in a very strong position as like the author and arbiter of signal and information, which could be very strong. So I guess my point in saying that is that like leaning into making Nostr as easy to scrape as possible is a good strategic move, because you know it might be the only network left standing, and like
it will be. I mean, because everyone else is like basically moving to like the solution is more KYC.
Well,
right? Like that's what like Twitter, like part of it with Elon is like not only is the user more valuable if they're KYC'd and you have identifying information with them, give credit card data. There's a reason he doesn't accept Bitcoin payments. He wants the credit card data. Credit card data gives a lot of information about an individual. But also like, are you clicking? Like who's clicking the fucking link? Like he doesn't want to pay out random Twitter bots to click links, and then he has to pay out the ad payments on a CPM basis. Like he doesn't want to do that. He wants to only pay out if it's a KYC person. And more of the internet is going to let's KYC as many people as possible. And Nostr is kind of going in the exact opposite way.
Yeah.
And doing like signed pub keys. I mean pub key signatures and web of trust. And then you can and then that actually works. Because you can fake all this KYC bullshit.
Yeah. How long do you think this is going to take to play out? Do you think this is like a 5 year thing, or I don't know?
Too long.
Yeah.
I'm tired. I don't know. We'll see. I do think like a lot of the LLM stuff, AI shit, like it accelerates a lot of this.
Yeah.
I mean, you can cause like a global incident if you do LLM fuckery with like a world leader. Like imagine like there was just like a fake Biden press release that came out or something.
Yeah.
And like so that those kind of things could accelerate. I do wonder, like, when do we have our first world leader on Nostr? Like, when do we have the first world leader that realizes they want to have censorship-resistant signed communications with their populace and the rest of the world?
Maybe Bukele, maybe.
Yeah, but I mean, besides him, I guess, because like he's like seems like low-hanging fruit. But yeah, he'll probably be the first. Let's be honest.
It's yeah. I mean, it's inevitable in some sense. Well, inevitable if people figure things out. But yeah, faced with AI, it's like the only solution, because you post on other stuff, or you post the videos, or if you, I mean, something even as simple, like even on Nostr right now, if I post a link to an image and the link doesn't contain the hash of the image, or the event doesn't reference the hash of the image in any way, like you have no way, like that's
like Milan could just change it.
Yeah, well, as long as there's
if I host it on Primal servers, like Milan could just like change dispatch, and it could just be like download Primal over and over again.
I think there's extra metadata that can be added to the event about the thing you're linking to that can protect against that. But yeah, it's if you don't have that, and you don't have the hash, and you don't have the signature, it's crazy how insecure the internet is.
Guys, I agree. This has been a fucking amazing conversation. I would say to the freaks in the live chat who said a lot of this went over their head, part of what inspired Dispatch was the wonderful bit devs community in New York, led by our fearless leader, Jay. I no longer live in New York, but it's one of the things I miss the most. And I will say that the first 4 years of bit devs in New York, literally everything went over my head. It kind of just comes in through osmosis. You just want to surround yourself with people talking about interesting things, and it kind of just comes in. So don't get overwhelmed. Don't be like, holy shit, I had no fucking idea what the fuck was going on in this conversation. It's important to go deep, and it does work its way into your brain. Guys, this has been. You guys make me incredibly bullish on the future. Thank you for both working on Nostr. I really do appreciate it. I know it can be thankless a lot of the time. I know people think we're fucking crazy, but I really do appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys joining us for the show. I know it's Hazard's his only second time on a podcast, which is kind of a big deal. But thank you. I appreciate you both. Yeah, 100%. I'm going to give you guys final thoughts, but before I do, Citadel Dispatch has no ads or sponsors. We are purely supported by Bitcoin donations from our audience. I think it was unique this week that our largest supporter was a completely anonymous person who decided to send 21,000 sats. So shout out to you, Anon. I do appreciate it. We also had support from Ride or Die Freak Ape Mithrandur, who gave 18,000 sats. And then we had Original Size with 10,000 sats and Verbertricia with 10,000 sats. I haven't met Verbertricia in person yet. I'm going to ask him how to pronounce his name, but I do appreciate him. He's helped out with open sats as well. But yeah, we don't have ads or sponsors. We're purely supported by our audience. Thank you guys for supporting us. Thank you for the Ride or Die Freaks that are constantly in the live chat, making the show unique, making the show special. That's what brings me back week after week. I know it's a bear market, but it's not really a bear market. But I know Peter Schiff is saying that Bitcoin's going to zero, and you guys are all really scared out there, and you don't want to spend your Bitcoin. And if that's the case, just share it with friends and family. We're on every podcast app. We're on YouTube till we get banned. We're on Twitter until I rashly decide to delete the Citadel Dispatch Twitter account. And all of our links are at citadeldispatch.com. So just share that, subscribe and shit. I don't know. I don't really like doing that thing. Guys, Stuart, Hazard, This has been great. Before we wrap up, let's hit the audience with some final thoughts. Stuart, final thoughts.
I mean, I feel like I kind of got into most of the stuff I wanted to get into today on technical level, but I just want to say that appreciate you guys, and I'm happy to be part of this. I got a kind of a funny feeling about this year. I feel like it's going to be significant, and kind of really looking forward to see what happens. And hopefully, I see some of you guys in Riga. I just signed up for.
Are you going to be at Nostriga?
Yeah, I hope so. I mean, I signed up for it, so assuming I get a ticket, I'm going to buy my plane tickets, and
I assume you're going to get a ticket.
That'd be sweet. I would love to see a lot of people that I've met over the last year there again in person, because something about being around people is, I think, really important. Maybe just everything's becoming AI, but like the flesh and blood is becoming important. I think it always was important.
Fuck yeah. Well, thank you for joining us. I plan to be in Riga.
Oh, sweet.
I don't want to feed the conspiracy theories too much, but I miss Nostrika. I miss Nostrasia. And Jack himself said to me, he was like, I'm just like paying for these events and you're not showing up. So I like feel like kind of like I should show up to Riga. And also Hodl Hodl, amazing people. I think it's the best Bitcoin conference of the year. Riga is a beautiful city. It's cheap. Everyone speaks English. Very safe. So people should consider going to Riga. I last time I was at Hodl Hodl was 2019, and I need to go back. So I'm planning to go for the whole week. I will give people a 95% certainty that it will happen.
Got to sign that with Nostr keys.
I'm not signing it yet with Nostr keys. You're just getting this. We can make a hash of this video file afterwards, and that's the best you're getting. Hazard, final thoughts.
Yeah, it's great to be here. It's great to talk. I love, like, over the last year, since I guess the beginning of Nostr, it's nothing more fun than just talking to people who are understanding Nostr, people who are building it. It's the craziest ideas can be found there. Final thoughts. Let's just build stuff, build crazy ideas, build, like, there's so much new apps. There's so many new weird solutions that Nostr enables with just backing stuff up, managing events or anything, and just build stuff. The more stuff we try, the more we'll know what actually works.
Fuck yeah. Thank you for building stuff, guys. I appreciate both of you. You guys are fucking crushing it. Keep pushing forward. And hopefully I'll meet both of you guys in person sometime soon. If not in Riga, somewhere else. And if there's anything you need personally, don't hesitate to reach out. You have me both on Signal now. It's my favorite way of communicating. And yeah, thank you.
Amazing. Great talking to you guys.
Peace.
Yeah, thank you.
Peace.
Has suffered massive and irreparable damage.
You never know what has happened to him.
Had I not been sure of this, I would not have permitted him to live.
Where?
Father?
What happened?
I need help.
What is democracy? What is democracy?
It's got something to do with young men killing each other, I believe.
When it comes my turn, will you want me to go?
For democracy, any man would give his only begotten son.
It is impossible for a decerebrated individual to experience pain, pleasure, memory, dreams, or thought of any kind. This young man will be as unfeeling, as unthinking as the dead until the day he joins them.
I don't know whether I'm alive or dreaming. dreaming or dead and remembering.
How can you tell what's a dream and what's real when you can't even tell when you're awake and when you're asleep?
Where am
I can't remember anything. Can't tell if this is true or a dream. Deep down inside I feel the scream. This terrible silence stops in me. Now that the war is through with me, I'm waking up, I cannot see that there's not much left of me. Nothing is real but pain now. Hold my breath as I wish for death. Oh please God, wake me.
I just went ahead and chopped off everything. Oh God, please make them hear me. They won't listen. They won't hear me.
I'll wake me up, I'll be like this for years.
Hear me.
Back in the womb, it's much too real. In pumps life that I must feel, but can't look forward to reveal. Look to the time when I live, fed to the dude that sticks in me, just like a wartime novelty, tied to machines that make me be. Cut this life off from me. Hold my breath as I wish for death. Oh please God, wake me.
It's like a piece of meat that keeps on living. It won't always be like this, will it?
I can't live like this. I can't. Please, no, I can't. I can't. Help me. Help me. Mother, where are you? Help me, Mother. I'm having a nightmare and I can't wake up.
Now the world is gone, I'm just one. Oh God, help me. Hold my breath as I wish for death. Oh please God, help me.
Me lying here like some freak in a carnival show.
He is the armless, legless wonder of the 20th century.
It has a dignity all its own.
Father, I need help. I'm in terrible trouble and I need help.
Don't you remember when you were little? How you and Bill Harper would bring a wire between the two houses so you could telegraph to each other? You'll remember the Morse code?
Darkness imprisoning me. All that I see, absolute horror. I cannot live, I cannot die. Trapped in myself, fighting my own exhale.
It's Morse code. For what?
SOS. Help.
Landmine has taken my sight, taken my speech, taken my hearing, taken my arms, taken my legs, taken my soul, left me with life in hell.
What's he saying?
He says, kill me. Over and over again. Kill me.
Don't you have some message for him, Padre?
He's the product of your profession, not mine.
Kill me. I'm asking you to kill me. Thank you. Pray for me, please. Father.
Each man faces death by himself. Alone.
Goodbye, Father. nobody pays any attention. If I had arms, I could kill myself. If I had legs, I could run away. If I had a voice, I could talk and be some kind of company for myself. Why don't they get it over with and kill me? I could yell for help, but nobody'd help me. I've just got to do something and see how I can go on like this.
Love you, freaks. If you've been living under a rock, that was One by Metallica. It just felt right. It just felt right. What a great rip. We have Will from Damas coming on next week, Tuesday, 1700 UTC. It's going to be a great rip. Definitely join us. I'm working on other rips. I appreciate you all. I love you all. We must win. Thank you. Stay humble, stack